Number 2.
I'm not new to run-ins with weird events. Sometimes they seem to resonate pure, unadulterated horror, and other times they're just inconveniences. I've entered hallways to go somewhere and stopped midway because I felt like I'd die if I stepped into that room. I've woken up with long, thin scratches along my face that I couldn't have caused myself. But if there's one place where I've had my most vivid encounters with the odd, it would be wherever my cousins lived at the time. It was during blackouts. One weekend night, when I and my siblings were visiting my cousins, my aunt decided to step out for a grocery run. We spent the first couple of minutes after her departure playing around and just generally having some fun. But several minutes later, the entire apartment complex went dark. We were experiencing the second blackout of this weekend. This wasn't an uncommon occurrence. We were very prepared for this kind of thing. We got a couple of battery-powered lamps and dispersed them amongst the bigger groups of people. 2 to the group that would be in the living room, and 1 to the group that would be waiting out the blackout in my aunt's room. It was a good enough system to get us by. But I was tired after all of the crazy things we'd done earlier. So after about 30 minutes, I opted to head to bed in my cousin's room. To better understand where this was, the room was in the furthest corner of the apartment, at the end of the long hallway that wound and bent to keep the room tucked away in a sort of pocket, away from every other room in the apartment. I should also mention, at this time, I was deathly afraid of the dark. But while I wanted to take one of the lanterns with me to my cousin's room, I didn't want to seem like a baby in front of everybody else, so I didn't take one with me. As I lay down on the floor, because the bed was for my cousin, I began to fall asleep. I had my back to the open air, and my eyes were locked on the wall in front of me. My lids began to drop low on my eyes, while a fresh wave of sleepiness fell over me. But then, from out of the darkness, I heard the bed behind me creak. It was a slow, a dreadful creak, as if whoever was settling on the bed was trying to do it as slowly and silently as possible. It was deliberate though. Not a bed, just settling or creaking with age. Something was on the bed, behind me. Now, let me be clear. No one had entered this room other than me, and believe me, I'd been sleepy, but not so inattentive to miss someone coming in. So who was making the bed creak and groan under that definite weight? My eyes shot open. I could feel my fingers digging into the carpet as I snapped myself back into focus, almost as if trying to prove to myself that this was real. But I kept my eyes stock still on the wall in front of me. I just listened. The springs in the bed, they stopped creaking after a moment. It was as if whatever was on the bed had finally settled in. And then the springs groaned again as the weight was lifted, and then strained under that weight again. Up and down, up and down, up and down. It was a horrid sound, as whatever was on that bed eased itself gingerly from the mattress, only to settle back onto the bed again and again. But I kept my eyes locked on the wall in front of me. I had a sinking sense of dread, and I knew I shouldn't turn around to the bed behind me. So I didn't. I kept my hands clenched into the carpet, and my body curled into a tight ball. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck prick up, and I wanted so badly to be anywhere else than in the dark with that noise. I stayed stock still for several minutes, gathering up the courage to leave, but the mind is a treacherous thing. In those minutes, with nothing but the dark and the springs creaking, I began to imagine what would happen to me if I got up to leave, or what that thing looked like, or why nobody else had come to help me. I began to hate them because they weren't here to protect me. I began to imagine ways that I could make them hurt because they didn't care I was terrified. They were laughing and playing board games, and I was about to die at the hands of something I could not see. At this point, my hate, my fear, boiled down together to something I hadn't expected. Resolve. As the creaking continued, my mind went blank. I couldn't think of anything else, even though I tried. I felt myself snap up into a sitting position, then rose to stand with my eyes to the wall. I primed my ears at the noise just to make sure it wasn't gone. It wasn't. But I could have sworn there was something more as well. I could have sworn I heard my name among the mess of breathy, raspy, cancerous whispers. But I turned on the spot and walked steadily out of the door into the long hallway. It was pitch black, but my mind was still blank, and I almost didn't register that I should be scared. So I made my way into my aunt's room to sit in the light of my family's lanterns. As soon as I entered the room, I felt, I don't know, but like myself again. The dull, empty mind was gone, replaced with an uneasy and paranoid one. I saw everybody accounted for. Nobody had gone into my cousin's room while I had been in there. I decided it was best for me to stay out of that room for the rest of the night. To this day, I have no idea what was in that room with me. It's been over 7 years, but I remember as though it had only just happened. That was the most lucid thing I think I've ever been through in my life. Too bad it was the most lucid fear I'd felt in years, too.
Number 1.
Before I start telling you this story, I want to say that I'm not here to tell you that this is absolutely real and that you have to believe me. These events occurred through the years and are yet to be explained. As always, you should believe whatever you want to believe. My story began in the early 2000s. I'm a male, and at the time of this story, I was 12. I was living with my single and unemployed mother in the Netherlands. We lived in a big city, the location of which I can't disclose to protect myself. We were living in a big apartment complex, the kind with an underground tunnel system for storage, which my family always warned me not to go venturing in because I could get lost. My mother used to beat me, so things were bleak at best. And growing up without a father and a deadbeat mother, my childhood was rough. But that's not what this story is about. We are originally from Russia, where the folklore is rich and the stories are plentiful. My mother was always into the occult. She used to do magic, as she called it. Communication with spirits via Ouija boards, predicting the future, and all other kinds of weird stuff. I never really believed this stuff, or had any particular interest in it whatsoever. As time passed, I witnessed a lot of different boyfriends of hers come and go. When she started delving into the occult, things were normal as far as I could call it normal. But soon, when I started to grow up, I started to notice all sorts of different stuff which other people in our circles simply dismissed when asked about it, or didn't believe me at all. I am a big skeptic and never believed in the paranormal. So, of course, if I heard voices in the house or shadows move and stuff like that, I dismissed it myself. Sometimes they were somewhat odd though, like doors slamming right in front of me, and the electric appliances such as the TV going nuts by flipping channels faster and faster. Some stuff did scare me though. For example, I had a cat named Mosca. She ran away. Witnesses claimed to have seen her in the tunnel system beneath the house. When she was found, her body was mutilated, as if not by an animal, but by a person carrying a knife or something. I was very upset and grieved over my beloved pet. Fast forward a few days, we started hearing cat noises all around the house at different intervals of time. So, for those who think it was just my childlike imagination running wild at night, this happened during the daytime as well as at night. One time, I woke up to my grandmother who was visiting us and said, "I can hear Mosca meowing in the bathroom." To this, of course, I got dismissed as having a nightmare or perhaps the cat noises coming from outside. That was until she started hearing Mosca meowing from the bathroom as well. The way our house was designed, there was a hallway coming in, then straight to the right you have the toilet, then the bathroom, and through another hallway there was a kitchen. If you walked straight instead, you entered the living bedroom. We were poor at the time, so we had to combine these. So my grandmother started to get up to investigate the noises, which would be heard through 2 closed doors. It was that loud. But when she entered the bathroom, the noises just stopped, and it went silent. Fast forward a couple of years. We moved to another city from Russia to the Netherlands. It's now the year 2000. I always had nightmares growing up, sometimes vivid, and sometimes I woke up screaming and crying from them. Now, this is where things really started to get dark. My mother became more and more abusive towards me as each day passed of her worshipping the devil and doing sessions like trying to contact our dead relatives. My mother was always honest to me though about who she was dating because she did somewhat care about me. One day, this telemarketer guy called from a blocked number. He was very friendly and was selling some sort of service. Something along the lines of an erotic hotline or something. I can't really remember. He was asking me all sorts of questions, such as if I ever used an erotic hotline. I was a teenager at the time and kind of gullible. I didn't mind answering very personal questions, such as if I used an erotic hotline. I was innocent, you could say. These kinds of calls happened on a regular basis. I was kind of used to it and didn't think much of it besides that this telemarketer guy is really persistent. One day, my mother overheard our conversation and took away the phone and scolded him for being a pervert to a teenage boy. After that, he never called back. At least, I think he didn't. During that time, my nightmares grew more and more frightening. I was dreaming of things I couldn't possibly come up with myself. Demonic things, trying to harm me. I was never into horror or demons and whatnot, so I found this very worrying, as I'd never seen this stuff before. So I started to see a shrink about this through my counselor. My shrink said that there was nothing wrong with me and couldn't get a diagnosis like schizophrenia or paranoia or anything. She was convinced it was just stress from school. I wish I could say it ended here, but it didn't. Things got downright terrifying after that. Every night, I started hearing noises in the living room. Our new house was open walking in, hallway to a set of doorways and the main staircase. Then you had the living room. To the left there was my mother's bedroom, and to the right mine. The noises started from my mother's room, like rustling, like someone or something moving stuff around or ripping paper sometimes. But every night it sounded almost like the noises grew stronger and closer to my bedroom. Near my bedroom door from the outside of my bedroom, there was this cupboard closet, and every time anyone walked to my room, you could hear the cupboard doors move because of the poorly laid wooden floors. Every time. This noise kept getting closer each night, until I started waking up from my nightmares around 3 o'clock at night, like clockwork. Then I started to hear knocking on my door every night. So the first time I just said, "Come in." But there was nothing. The knocking didn't stop. I found it peculiar. My mother isn't the type of person to knock. She just comes in as she pleases and without pardon or asking first. This knocking always continued for several minutes without pause. It sounded like someone was just trying to scare me or something, to mess with me. And it worked. It instilled so much fear in me that I used to block the door with other stuff in my room, such as furniture. Knowing what my mum was into, I didn't dare to open the door. Who knows who or what could have been out there? Just my reasoning, I guess. After the first night of knocking, I decided to confront my mother about scaring me half to death. I asked her, "Why did you knock on my door so late at night and didn't answer or come in?" To which she simply replied, angrily, "How dare you insinuate that I try to scare you? I love you, and I would never do that. Stop your childish nonsense, or I'll get very mad at you." This scared me because I knew my mother wasn't a saint, but at the very least, she wasn't a liar either. I dismissed it thinking it was the neighbours or some noise from outside. But the knocking always came back, and louder each night. I could clearly hear it was on my door, and not the neighbours or the outside noise. I had trouble sleeping after this. We lived alone. What could it be? This is when it, or they, or whoever was responsible, started to harass my friends and girlfriend at the same time. First, I started getting phone calls from a blocked number to our house phone. These were almost always at night, and always when I was home alone. I'm no coward, so I thought to myself, these are just some pranks to scare me. The problem was, my mother didn't have too many friends being the person she is. So why would she tell anyone if she left me alone for the night, doing who knows what? The first time it happened, I picked up and said, "Hello?" There was a sound of a man breathing. I asked again, "Hello? I can hear you breathing. Who are you looking for?" Then the person calling just hung up the phone. This continued. The second time when I picked up the phone and asked hello, I swear I could hear something like a wind blowing leaves. And again, silence. Then the person calling just hung up again. After a couple of months of harassment, I started to become suspicious. Someone must be watching me, I thought to myself. But who and why? The person always knew I was alone, and every time I confronted my mother, she just got angry and annoyed, saying it was definitely not her. I believed her too. She was serious about that. Or at least she told me so. Fast forward a couple of weeks. My mother started to get the same kind of calls on her cell phone. So she complained to the phone company. They just said to her,
There's nothing we can do, madam. You should just change your number.
So we did that. But the calls, they still continued. At that time, I had a couple of friends who I talked about all this to, and even asked them to spend the night whenever I was left alone. Every one of my friends who spent the night with me, trying to help divert my thoughts, they started to get the phone calls as well. At one point, and at one of these random calls, I just angrily picked up the phone and shouted after hearing silence yet again,
"You're a coward, and I'm not afraid of you. Come and face me in person if you dare."
To which there was silence. But this time, I hung up the call. My friends who were involved in this by helping me, who got those calls, might have been watched too. I was angry until my girlfriend of a long-distance relationship, unaware of all this, started getting calls too. I was terrified and desperate and started thinking I was losing my mind or something, until that call. One day, I was taking a shower and came back to my room afterwards, when suddenly, as I open my door and I get dressed, I see my screen light up from my phone, and it's a call from my girlfriend. I picked up and she said,
"Great timing, she was right."
To which I replied,
"What are you talking about?"
She said,
"I spoke to your mum. She was a nice lady and told me exactly when to call you to catch you from the shower."
I was utterly flabbergasted. I never told my mother about my girlfriend, much less than let them speak, since my mum and I were never close or on good terms even. I asked my girlfriend,
"What did that woman you spoke to sound like? Kind of a soft, sweet voice and no accent."
Since we are Russian and my mother speaks broken Dutch with a heavy accent, I couldn't believe my ears. All of this was possible if my mum picked up and told her, but those few slight details, they didn't add up. I always had a lock on my phone to protect my privacy from friends and others like my mum. I didn't even tell my mother I was taking a shower. To make matters worse, my phone was set on silent, meaning no noise or vibration. When I asked my mother about this again, she just shot me another angry and annoyed look.
"I didn't talk to anyone. You're crazy."
I was in shock, still trying to piece the puzzle together. Fast forward another couple of weeks. One of my friends got another phone call during class. His mother was sick at the time, and he needed to know when he could come and pick her up from the hospital. He said he had missed the call, but never heard the phone ring. It went straight to voicemail. When listening to it, all we heard were, and the only way I know how to describe it is, screams of a woman accompanied by lots and lots of static. It was very unsettling because the screams were so loud and real, like she was being tortured or something. When we tried to go to the police with the voicemail message, it was like it was deleted from his phone as well. I called bullshit on this one, but my friend knew how scared we all were and wouldn't prank me like that. Plus, he was really scared himself, and he said that he didn't delete the message and was going to try and figure out how to get it back. Even now, all of this sounds a bit like random coincidences. We weren't giving out numbers after all these calls started, and yet we kept getting those phone calls. After a while, I didn't even pick up my phone anymore. Neither did my friends. That's when I think I started to become a believer in the paranormal. One night, my friend was staying at our place. Since the whole ordeal with the calls, I started to bury everything, since I was scared of being alienated by my friends. This particular friend I was friends with for a long time, and I never told him about any of this. His name was Jeffrey. It was in the winter. We were alone just playing video games and generally having a good time. Since it was winter, I had the heating system cranked to 25 Celsius because I hate being cold. After a couple of hours of playing, my friend went to the bathroom to take a leak and I stayed in my room playing with a new software program which I just got. I was laughing really hard after I started to modify this picture of one of my classmates. That is, before I heard a deafening scream coming from the bathroom all the way from downstairs. It was my friend, so I ran as fast as I could downstairs to see what was going on. He was crying and locked himself in saying,
"Why did you say it? Like, why?"
I had no idea what he was talking about and asked,
Said what? What are you talking about?
He replied,
My name. Someone outside the door just kept whispering my name, and it was you. I asked you to stop, but you didn't. Why?
to which I responded.
I was upstairs the whole time, and didn't even go downstairs.
Reluctantly, he opened the door and we fled upstairs. Remember how I told you the heating system was jacked up to a high level of heat? It got so cold when we went back up, like the temperature was -10 or something. We just barricaded ourselves in till the morning. The next morning, he left saying he'll never stay over my house again, leaving me alone for the weekend. My mum was away for the week and I didn't know what to do, so I stayed at school as long as possible every day. The next Monday, I came home from school after it was closing time, and when I come home, I make a habit of closing every door and window because I'm scared of intruders. When I returned, I immediately closed the door with the key and took the key with me. I opened the door to the living room and glanced down when suddenly I hear footsteps walking up the stairs. The previous owner of the house did say he moved out of the house because his brother hung himself in the attic, and he heard his brother walking around at the house talking to himself after he killed himself. As a skeptic, I just said,
My condolences, but I don't believe in the supernatural.
When I heard those footsteps, I immediately started thinking about that man's brother for some odd reason. Remembering his story, I said to myself,
That's nothing. Perhaps the neighbors or something.
and kept going in the living room as I intended. When I enter the living room, I hear footsteps again, running, like in a panic or something, up the stairs where I just came from. Now I was spooked, and yelled out like an idiot,
Mum, is that you? Who's there?
but I got no response. I started to become suspicious, and thought if it is an intruder, I'm going to catch them and arrest them. Yes, I was a naive teenager. So I walked upstairs calling out still.
Mum, this is not funny.
When I got upstairs, all the doors to all the rooms were open, and there was stuff scattered everywhere. When I looked under the bed of my mother's bedroom, I heard the same panicked footsteps running to the attic. I was now scared, thinking someone had run past me twice in a closed room without being seen. When I arrived in the attic, it was empty as well. No one was there. I froze, just froze, and I couldn't move a muscle. When I realized that this is happening, it's not my imagination. I picked up the pace and fled downstairs as fast as I could, thinking this is like a demon or something. Some intelligent entity trying to lure me upstairs. I reached the last staircase when I suddenly feel 2 hands push me down the stairs, hard. I just ran away. I knew I closed all the doors when I left. I was very precise in that because of being scared for so long. I just sat outside my house, confused, until nighttime. Not knowing what to do, I finally returned thinking maybe it's going to be okay now. I entered my room and ran as quickly as I can to the bathroom to take a hot shower from sitting outside in the cold for so long. I closed my bathroom door and tried to calm down and clear my thoughts. We have this big mirror in the shower. My mother insists on keeping it pristine, so I always wash it off with a cleaning product twice a week. I remember washing that mirror because it was at that time of the week again when I did it. After my shower, I get dressed and decided to leave the bathroom. When I scream in fear, I saw what looked like a handprint of a man or something. The handprint? It wasn't mine. This handprint was much smaller. It was on the mirror, like someone leaned on it during my shower and just waited there. The bathroom was closed from the inside. I closed the door. I decided after that it was time to leave, so I just upped and left in the middle of the night. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Luckily, my friend was at home, so I could crash there until my mum arrived home again. Fast forward a couple of days, I was back at school and my mum was back at home. I come home and then suddenly hear rustling and smashing of stuff upstairs. I run to see if my mum is okay and see her like I've never seen her before, bleeding, packing everything as fast as she could. I asked,
Are you okay, Mum? What's going on?
She replied in a panicked hurry,
We must get out of this house as fast as we can. Something evil is here, and it's dangerous.
I got very scared seeing her like this. I asked what happened. Since she always said it was my imagination, she never believed me and eventually I stopped telling her all about the weird stuff happening altogether. She said to me, and I can still remember it word for word,
"Yesterday night, when I got home, I hear footsteps coming to my door. It began all the way from downstairs. The footsteps stopped at my bedroom door, which was closed, and I heard a knock. So I thought it was just you or something. I said come in and got no reply. After the knocking, I started again. I said come in again, and still no reply. So I opened the door, only to see an empty hallway. When this morning you got off to school, I was doing laundry. When I was stacking clothes in the big 2-door closet, it suddenly came off the wall, and it almost crushed me. I managed to stop it just in time."
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It absolutely horrified me, because I myself with a friend had secured that closet on the wall with 8 screws so that it could never tip.
"Not even an earthquake would be enough to tip that now,"
we would joke after securing it. I knew my mother was serious because she was actually bleeding. The lamp, which was stored up on the closet, came tumbling down and smashed directly on her face. I helped her to pack up all the remaining things, and we just got out of there. This whole ordeal was so frightening that I don't even know what to believe. We moved, changed numbers, even had a priest come in and cleanse the house each time. Nothing seemed to help though. It all stopped happening after I moved out from my mother's. Mostly, the calls stopped. From time to time, I still find stuff misplaced, or broken even, and the occasional disembodied voices still can be heard from time to time wherever I stay. What could have caused all that? I highly elaborate maybe a stalker, some sort of unseen force, or was it just all the work of my crazed mother lying to me? I'll never know. I still don't understand half of what happened and can't place it. I'm happily married now and try to put that part of my past beside me. If you've had something similar happen to you, please share your thoughts and stories with me. I could really use some answers right about now. Feel free to call bullshit on this story or call me a liar. I know I wouldn't believe any of this if it didn't happen to me personally. My memories still scare me sometimes. I just hope whatever or whoever was responsible decides to stay away for good this time. G'day mates, it's Busta here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all here. And for the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And as always, keep them coming guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also, please do me a favor and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent just so that I can be above board with everything. And be sure to remember as well to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. As always guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you mates in the next one.